Ex-ministers warn UK universities will go bust without higher fees or funding. We're going to read into this exclusive from The Guardian, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an exclusive from The Guardian with the headline of Ex-ministers warn universities will go bust without higher fees or funding. The exclusive reveals that the Vice-chancellor suggests fee rises of $2,000 to $3,050 a year, but others say that that is politically impossible. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share it across social media so others are notified of this video. Our universities are really, really important. They attract one of the brightest and students from around the world. And as you guys may or may not be aware, I covered a story not a while ago about how the government is making it more difficult for international students to come to the UK to study or work and whatnot, simply because of them not being allowed to take family members. Now, it's easy for some people to sit in the comment section saying that, complaining about it, saying it's not really a big of a deal. Well, considering that universities and colleges and whatnot, they play quite a big role in our economy in producing talent, and there's a lot of money in that. And these universities can't just rely on young English young English or British or people to basically make their way into this university, because some of them don't have the money. They just don't have the money. Yeah, and it's a reminder that we are in a cost of living crisis. So some people just don't have those necessities for that. So what does it mean? So basically, it means that the universities will not have that funding that they had before. And it could lead to situations like this headline here about the possibility of them going bust. Now, you might think this may be a bit exaggerated, but it's not, because these universities need students. They need them. But this is obviously as well more about the funding itself. That they either need to increase the fees or increase the funding. Now, obviously, increasing the fees, it seems a bit unfair, especially for some people who don't have that kind of money in their, especially for those who don't have that kind of money, who already spend a huge amount just to come to the UK, to come to these university or colleges, or those within the UK are already spending such a huge amount to get into these universities. We're talking about putting more money in their pocket, talking about them putting themselves into bigger debts to try and pay back these things. Whereas it could be a case of the government just funding it themselves as well. And don't give me the nonsense about there is no money, because we can magically make money for defence, but we can't make money for NHS and other stuff. So to say that there isn't money, that money can't be put to this, is a very can be done. But these are important. These are important. And education, if anybody who knows me well, education is pretty much the bedrock of any society. Without education, people do not learn, people do not grow, and people do not get better. We need education. It is such a fundamental importance in all aspects of society, which is why we must do everything within our power to look after UK universities at any and all costs. And the last thing we want to hear about is a UK university going bust, which is potentially what could happen down the line here. So let's read more into this. So the Vice-chancellor and former minister are warning that the cash crisis facing universities are so serious that the government will have to urgently raise tuition fees or increase funding to avoid bankruptcy within 2 years. They said that the state of university finance was more dire than revealed in last week's report by the Office for Students, which forecast 40% of England's universities would end this year in the red. Vice-chancellor said increases of between $2,000 and $3,500 a year for each student would be needed to stabilise the sector. Two former university ministers, the Conservative peer David Willetts and Labour's Alan Johnson, put the Labour peer Peter Mandelson, a former business secretary, all said there needed to be increased funding for universities as a matter of urgency. Another former higher education minister, the Labour MP Margaret Hodge, said raising fees was politically impossible, but that the funding system needed to be made more progressive. The value of the domestic tuition fees has fallen with inflation, and universities are becoming significantly reliant on overseas students who can be charged significantly more. Many in the sector fear Rishi Sunak will announce further measures to reduce international student numbers this week, to coincide with the publication of the latest UK immigration statistics on Wednesday. Yeah, because people are so concerned about immigration, it doesn't really realise there are negative impacts to it as well. But sovereignty is more important than our universities, obviously. Neither the Conservatives nor Labour is likely to want to focus on the issues before an election, with the idea of raising student fees particularly difficult for the latter party as its leader. Keir Starmer had promised in his leadership campaign to scrap tuition fees before a U-turn on the pledges last year. Lord Mandelson, who is Chancellor of Manchester Metropolitan University, said he believed there would need to be reform of the loan system, as it was so onerous at present, but said he suspects the fees would have to rise in the short terms. Again, why should the students pay more? The peer, an architect of New Labour, which introduced the tuition fee system in 1998, said universities are under huge financial pressure, both because of their income is falling a long way short of their costs, and because some in the government actually want fewer universities and access to them. The government actually wants fewer universities and access to them. Yeah, you can't have fewer universities and the same access. That's not how it works. This cannot be turned around overnight by a new incoming government, but there will need to be some emergency uptick in resources to save both universities' teaching and vital research. Lord Willetts, who was University Minister when the cap on fees was hiked to 9,000 in 2012, said, "I'm sure all the political parties will be tempted to try and avoid it, but all the costs in doing so, in doing nothing, are rising all the time. They are borne by students who have worse qualities, higher education experiences, and there will be an increasing risk in some universities going bust." Willetts, who is now president of the Resolution Foundation think tank, added universities may stagger on until the election, but ignoring the problem won't work for 5 more years. Johnson, a former education secretary who is now Chancellor of the University of Hull, said fees should at least be restored to their pre-freeze value and then index linked. The threshold for repayment should also rise with the cost of living. The argument on defensive fees has been won. Students understand that they are world away from credit card debit, he added. But Holtz, who helped devise a new Labour policy as University Minister between 2001 and 2003, said increasing fees would be politically impossible. You're probably lumped with the current system, in my view, just in terms of practical politics. We ought to move to a situation where fees go up with inflation. I think we should move to a radical debate around that. And if you left it to me, I should focus on all public subsidies on children from poor backgrounds, he said. The one Vice-chancellor, Professor George Holmes at the University of Bolton, said raising fees would be too unpopular with voters and unaffordability for students. Instead, he wanted central government to grant an uplift of roughly £2,000 for every domestic student, coupled with a cap on the number of UK students each university can recruit, to avoid feeding a frenzy of over-recruitment. Okay. My advice for any party: don't do it, because students and their families won't like it. And there's a lot of students that have all got families. You'll be losing millions of votes. It's not a smart move, whoever you are, but you still have to address the university resource and issues, Holmes says. Last year, Labour said it would bring down graduate repayments, with insiders saying they've been looking at graduate repayment schemes. This would involve different repayment rates according to salary level. Insiders said there was a debate over the issue within Labour, and that the party would need to see what it inherited from the Conservatives before making a decision on the tuition fees and increasing maintenance for poor students. Yeah, this is the line that they always take, Labour, is that we can't make a decision because we don't know what the economy is going to be like when we're in power. And the thing is, they're sticking to their whole physical rules because they don't want to open up a blank check, which they can, to fix a lot of things in the country. Which is a bit of annoying, if I'm honest. The key thing is about making sure universities are still attractive to students. We have to make sure we focus on maintenance, one Labour source said. Professor Nick Browby, the Vice-chancellor of Buckinghamshire New University, said there was an urgent need for more support and that the tuition fee rises alone would hit students. but who also need more support. If something doesn't change in the next 2 to 3 years, the position is going to be very difficult. Something that has to be done quickly before the 2025-2026 academic year. If it's delayed much longer than that, some institutions will probably go under, he said. Bradsby said the quickest option would be to raise domestic undergraduate fees from £9,250, but less the psychological importance level of £10,000. I think there is a scope for the modest increase of up to £9,750. It would be an injection of funds quickly, and it would probably mean the universities on the brink could survive a little longer. Review could be done, he said. Vernon Stone, the chief executive of UK Universities, the sector's main lobbying group, said there were two big things the government could do: reinstate raising tuition fees with relying on inflation each year, and for ministers to stop using international students as a political football for the immigration debate. Yeah. Stop. Yeah. This is one thing they need to stop doing. I totally agree. Leave international students out of this. They bring in a lot of funding. Like, can we not use them? Like, I get the whole stop the boats crap, but you know, if you generally care about British universities, you will not sit on the. If you generally care about British universities, if you care about these institutions that raise a lot of money for the economy, if you generally have any care for them, you will not be kicking and screaming about international students coming here and paying a lot of money to be a part of them, because they are important. Recent visa changes have led to a slump in international students' applications, depriving universities of a lucrative source of revenue. Last week, the Migration Advisory Commission reported that the graduate visa, which allows international students to stay in the UK for up to 3 years after completing a course, should be left alone. But the Prime Minister is said to be still considering further restrictions to bring international student numbers down. It's just like there is not one form of immigration. There's all kinds of immigration, but this is one that I don't think we should be touching at all. For God's sake, stabilise international demand. It cannot be like this. We're dealing with a bloom followed by a bust, Stern said. That boom to bust is an absolute disaster, and if the government closes the graduate routes, it could tip a number of institutions who were otherwise managing into different positions. And he's absolutely right. Just don't touch the international students. Stop fickering about with them is my message there. But there are obviously other fundings and needs that they need to be looked at as well. About how we keep that going as well. That's going to be a major topic point, obviously. But Labour kind of once again sitting a bit on the fence on what they're going to do, because they're going to wait and see where things are then. But one thing I do believe is that they will not sit and just let the universities go bust. They will take action, Labour, if they come into power. I do think they will. I don't think they're just going to sit by and allow them to fall short. But the Conservatives at the moment not really addressing this issue enough, and they're just kind of paying too much attention about immigration, and they're kind of throwing international students into that category as well, which I think is a bit harsh, if I'm honest. Yes, we do have an immigration issue, but that outside of that, we're talking about those who come across the boats illegally, those who are stuck in hotels and barges, not really doing anything. We're talking about international students that are actually contributing to society. Not only that, they're also obviously bringing in a lot of funding for the universities, which in turn brings a lot of funding to the economy and whatnot. So, just very, very important caveat there. But it is great. It is very concerning that the possibility of UK universities going bust. That is a very worrying trend that we're seeing, because this is the second couple of times actually now I've seen stories about this. So we should be very concerned. But what do you guys think? What do you guys make of the possibility of some UK universities going bust? What do you make of the fact that they're looking to restrict even more of international students, which brings a lot of funding to these universities? What is the solution if it's reduction of international students? How exactly are we going to know? Are you happy as taxpayers to fork more money out in order to keep these universities afloat, for example, in doing so? Let me know your thoughts and more about all these in the comment section down below. If you found this video informative, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video, and subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content there as well. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope to catch you all very, very soon.